Part two, let's jump back in. All right, let's start with key descriptors. Let's start broad when we're talking about this painting and move our way in. Moving out from the outside, like fancy dining cutlery sets. That's right, top tips. Now let's actually look at the art. So, genre. Genre has two meanings. And if you've ever taken a writing class from me, we've talked about the other kind. It can mean style, usually when talking about music. But here it's literally just like, what is it? It's the category of art type. So, like, what's the genre? What is it? Is a sculpture, a painting, a drawing, wood carving, graffiti with spray paint? What is it? Is the genre? I guess we kind of touched on a little bit of the media. The singular is medium, like small, medium, large. What is it made of? So your graffiti is made with acrylic aerosol spray paint. The material that it's made from, is it wood and marble? Is it oil paints on canvas? Is it watercolor on paper? Is it clay? So your media or medium, if it's just made of one thing, like a marble statue, it has one medium, marble. That is what it is made of. So what it is, what it's made of. And then technique is how it was made. We can get into specific techniques as we study the art and techniques of the time. But, a brush versus finger blending for paint, finger painting techniques, fingers, oil painting techniques, brushes, chisel carving, wood cutting stamps, etching of glass or metal. You've got all of these technique options. So these are sort of three descriptors that you need to start with any piece that you are presented with. Give the genre, the media, the techniques as far as you can identify. All right, let's talk about sort of this artist-viewer relationship that I was kind of getting at with approaching the art. Genre here, we have sculpture. Medium is marble. Technique is, chisel. Definitely not laser. So Michelangelo, he sculpted this Pietà in 1498. So, 500 years ago, not lasers. Artist viewer. Pre-Renaissance, you had craftsmen's workshops, right? You went to visit a workshop and ordered a portrait of the Virgin Mary or a sculpture of a horse or whatever it is you were going to do. So you went to the Florence Sculptors Guild or the London, whatever. You went to a specific guild or workshop. So you looked for a group, or a certain city was famous for their craftsmen in a particular area. This idea of a single person being like a rock star, didn't exist really before the Renaissance era. We have a few exceptions from ancient art. So I'm not going to say that it didn't happen, but it was very uncommon to have one particular artist named as an individual. So a single person was just like not a thing. Rockstar artist. The rockstar artist as a thing was really born in the Renaissance. Michelangelo was one of them. This piece is incredibly shocking because this is his Pietà. This is the Virgin Mary holding her son, Jesus, dead, his corpse after he had been crucified. Please note the sash on Mary's chest here. It's a little bit blurry, but if you could see that, it is chiseled in Michelangelo Buonarroti faciebat. Michelangelo Buonarroti made this. He literally autographed his name across the middle of the Virgin Mary's tits. I cannot explain to you how shocking that was. Not only sort of the placement and that it's dead center, it's not like on the bottom underneath, even how modern artists might sign something. But that the very idea that an artist would sign his work as an individual, shocking. But again, even look how large this signature is. Hugely radical. Um, it's scandalous. And it's honestly still is, if you think about it. So thinking about this idea of your relationship with the artist as an individual versus the sculpture being sort of by committee. You as an individual being the viewer and looking at something that, say, Michelangelo did as an individual. It's a completely different relationship depending on what era we are talking about for what the art means and what your experience is. All right, so viewing pieces, the focal point versus point of view. Focal point, it's where your eyes go first. Point of view is your relationship with the scene. Again, we sort of started with your relationship with the art here previously, but this is your relationship with the scene, how you enter and process the piece. These two concepts are different. We'll figure them both out separately here, but I think it's good for you to look at them together as we identify both for each piece. All right, let's start with point of view. So, again, this is how you approach a piece, what your relationship is as the viewer. Your big two sort of sections here are passive versus engaged. So we've got three different sort of words for why we feel passive in a piece. You've got theater, like sit back with some popcorn and just like watch what's happening. No one's asking anything of you. Just like if you went to the movies, like very rarely does somebody, we call it breaking the fourth wall, when somebody looks straight at you. Like, you know, Ferris Bueller, he looks straight at the camera, he looks straight at you and asks you questions. You know, that's rare in a movie, right? It's the whole idea of that being unusual is breaking the fourth wall. Honestly, that fourth wall between us and the movie is almost always up. So it's a passive experience where you just sort of watch what's happening. Nobody asked you. Bird's eye view. So this is sort of out of body experience. This is where you're passive, you're hovering above the scene. Again, out of body experience. That's a way that we describe being disengaged from our own real experiences, right? So you're hovering above the scene. You don't have to full on be looking at like, you know, a Google map view of something to be bird's eye view, but definitely above what would be sort of an engaged, you're actually present in the situation scene. Opposite of bird's eye view is a worm's eye view. So passive from below, that you're sort of disengaged from it because it's not a normal viewing experience. We've got a couple of great examples of those where, again, you can feel how uncomfortable it is to have this unusual, disengaged experience of the view. Engaged. There are many, many ways to describe how you can be part of a scene. So we're going to get into that a little bit. Passive or active is kind of the first question we'll ask ourselves. So passive or active, and then why? And sometimes there's sort of two answers depending on the different aspects of the painting you're looking at. So here's this one. We've got Raphael's Sistine Madonna. This is 1513. We got this high Renaissance action going on. Theater style. I mean, complete with curtains, right? Just like sit back and watch the show. It's literally happening behind a curtain. Take in the scene. The angels add some extra whimsy down here. Like these are probably Raphael's angels are the most famous part of this entire scene. I don't know if you've ever known that these little famous cherubby guys were part of this larger piece here. It's theatrical whimsy. People are floating. I wouldn't call this full-on worm's eye view, but it's a little bit like stadium seating in a movie theater where the theater screen is, you know, above you, lifted up like that. I mean, so is the Virgin Mary there, sort of lifted up on clouds. You and the art are separate. There's sort of a distance and removal from these otherworldly beings, right? These holy hosts. Theater, it's got a curtain. You're down below in your lounge chair, admiring the baby Jesus with popcorn in hand. The cherubs, they're just hanging out and watching, right? So they're kind of your cue in to how even characters within this scene are more disengaged from the main action. So passive, theater style passive, totally. Versus something like this, Hawthorne's Adoration of the Shepherds in 1622. So a short 100-ish years later, we've got this engaged view, intimate even. Why? Well, you've got this cropped composition. The action is taking place off screen, right? The rest of this cow is somewhere off frame. The rest of this guy's body somewhere off frame, right? This is a very cropped image where you've zoomed in and you can see that there's obviously action spilling off the frame. You are very close to the action as if you're one of the characters in the scene, right? You have your own individual perspective joining the scene. Are you a shepherd at the birth of Christ? No one's looking directly at you, but you're definitely sort of shouldered in there, getting a front row seat. There's no halo. Mary and Joseph are just very normal folk. This is a very intimate gathering. I'd say that it's quite a quaint, normal, intimate viewing, except for maybe the fact that there's a glowing baby in the middle that is our only source of light. So we've got something special going on here, but other than that, this sort of looks like a very normal, intimate, personal, mundane experience that you are a part of. And then the glowing baby in the middle makes it special. So that's engaged because of, once again, these cropped image of there's action spilling off the screen. There's parts of people's bodies that aren't in view. So there's more going on around you, which can then kind of circle around and encapsulate you having a view of the scene as well. Another way to engage, this is Franz Marc's Horse in Landscape, 1910. This is called shared perspective. You're sharing the same perspective or experience as a character in the scene. So this horse, he's not looking at you. He's not, like, I don't know if any of you did theater, but I'm pretty sure one of the things they say is like, don't turn your back on the audience. So this is not like for you as an audience. This is not a theater perspective. He's looking at the same thing you're looking at. Think of a crowd of people all staring at something. You turn to see what they're looking at and share their perspective, right? Rather than being the guy who like walks in front of them to take a picture of a bunch of people staring at something behind you. I think that would be a very weird thing to do because usually the thing behind you that everyone's staring at is the interesting thing. So this shared perspective is a way to engage a viewer. So if you ever see somebody's back turned to you or you're looking over someone's shoulder, that is a way for the art to engage you by sharing the perspective of one of the characters. All right, let's look at this Titian, the Madonna Pizarro, 1519. So we're back into the high Renaissance action. What do you see? You've got this theater-like frame of the architecture between you and the scene. Point of view, like you're at the same height as the men, like the Pizarro family, but a little bit down below. Like, are you entering the hall? You've got to take the step up here. So theater, passive, right? And then look at this boy at the right. He is staring straight at you. So you're now part of that scene. It's inviting. It's engaging, an invitation to join. Are you part of the onlookers below? Are you the lost member of the Pizarro family and you're late? And he's like, where the hell have you been, Uncle Jim? It kind of looks like your nephew's annoyed that you're walking in late. But this whole eye contact, that's, again, just like in a movie, just like in Ferris Bueller, like breaking the fourth wall, turning and looking directly at you engages you. It sort of breaks that separation between what's happening in the painting and with you. This is also a huge indicator of where you're supposed to be viewing this piece. If you're standing in the room in the gallery, this kid should be looking right in your eyes. So if the painting is hung too low, he's going to be looking at your kneecaps. And that's not as engaging, and that's incorrect. If he's hung too high, he's going to be looking over your head at, somebody who's 9 feet tall or 10 feet behind you or something. So when there's some breaking fourth wall engagement like this, that is an excellent way to sort of be able to know to the inch of where that painting should be hung height-wise, or where that sculpture should be hung height-wise. All right, let's look at Ghiberti. Jacob and Esau. This is sort of 1425 to 52. This is a relief sculpture in bronze. Part of the doors of the Baptistry of San Giovanni in Paris. I'm sorry, Paris. What am I talking about? Florence. These are known as the Gates of Paradise. And the POV, you're on ground level with these characters walking on the same plane, right? Like you've got some perspective going on here where you've got these tiles. But have a look around. Something feels a bit off with the way I'm presenting this to you, just out of context on a screen in a reproduction. Note the bottom of the shoes sticking out at you a lot. And biggest thing, that dog looking down, like again, at your kneecaps or your shoes or something. But it's actually impossible in real life to meet this panel at the wrong point of view. You've got it's stuck to a wall. So here you can see I circled it for you. It makes perfect sense now, right? These doors are huge. That panel right there, it's above you, which means that the soles of the shoes would be like people walking at that level above you, and that dog is staring you right in the face. So if you were viewing this in person, he'd be looking at you right in the eye. You've got a worm's eye view. You're passive. You're below the level of sort of normal walk-in engagement. But that dog is a character in the scene making eye contact. So they're inviting you to engage. Otherwise, you've got this worm's eye view, weird point of view. It's a passive viewing experience until you've got that one character, yes, it's a dog, that is inviting you to engage. So is this passive or engaged? The final verdict is engaged, right? Just like the Pizarro family, you've got this passive theatrical or worm's eye view thing that's sort of distancing you as not part of it. But then when a character turns to engage you, they've invited you in. The final verdict is overall, this is engaged. Talking about tension in that engagement where they've given you this worm's eye view or they've given you this passive theater outside of the room experience. That's the kind of thing you can critique, right? All right, so we talked about point of view. Let's talk about focal point. Focal point. This is Raphael's Madonna of the Meadow, 1505. Focal point. The place where your eye goes first. Children. Fat, naked, shiny, white babies. Lily white, naked baby in the middle of the scene. You see that probably first. And then you're seeing like the movement of these baby arms interacting. They are starting to arc up, right? John the Baptist is the slightly older naked baby, is holding this cross. Baby Jesus is also holding this cross a little bit higher. So your primary focal point, you're going to see these like lily white naked babies. And then you start to notice the motion of where they're getting you towards this cross. It's a pointer up to Madonna's face. This face is the secondary focal point. Pretty lady faces are usually the primary or secondary focal point. I'd say because they're expensive to commission, they're nice to look at. And they're also sometimes the narrative point of the scene. All right, so these were some, like easy ones to get your feet wet. Here's Bruegel's The Elder Battle of Bruegel the Elder Battle of Carnival and Lent, 1559. Super busy composition here. Follow the movements of the people. You kind of get this overall shape of like the way people are moving, what's happening. So there's a flow to the crowd. Always check out sort of what's near the middle. I would not say that that's 100%, but it's a good start most of the time. I am really sorry about this, but for me, I feel like this is harder for you if you've never seen this before, because the light, this is almost like this piece has been color remastered. It's much brighter than the original, which makes it harder to actually follow when it comes to focal point of view. So there's some lighter soil towards the center of the piece, right? And if you look at vanishing point, people further away should be smaller. And then as you get forward, they get bigger because they're closer, right? These are far away. So you've got these larger people here. This artist, Bruegel the Elder, is quite good at getting that size scale ratio down. But if you notice here, you've got kind of small-ish people, and then these people are slightly larger than they should be for the scale of where they are in the piece. And they have their backs to us. We're sharing their perspective here. That's an invitation to engage, right? So we've got this lighter color here in the middle. We've got these slightly larger people than others. We're looking over their shoulders from behind, so we're following them. We're engaged and sort of seeing their perspective. It's a really busy scene, but it's kind of following that couple in the center, travelers who found themselves in the middle of this chaos between the drunken festivities of Carnival and the religious procession of Lent on the other side. So they're kind of stuck in the middle, literally in front of a jester in motley. And, which side will they choose, Carnival or Lent? So even when it's busy like this, there can be a primary focal point. You just might have to take a minute to cruise the whole scene and look for these kinds of clues. All right, something like this Jackson Pollock, 1952, The Convergence. Focal point. Nope, that's the point. It's called, when there is no focal point, it's called an overall painting. This is also used as a term when a pattern is repeated quite evenly across a surface without one razzle-dazzle focal point that's different. That sort of repetition is more often what you would find in an ancient piece of art. But Jackson Pollock sort of did his own thing to create this overall painting. It makes sure that he was as even as possible without creating sort of tonal differences or mood differences across the entire canvas. So sometimes there isn't a focal point, at which point you would call it an overall. All right, so how does focal point and point of view affect one another? Let's check these two out. We've got the Manet boating in 1874 on the left, and Renoir's Woman in a Boat, 1877 on the right. So we've got sort of like same time period, same like zone, but focal point and point of view make a difference for how you read these paintings. All right, so let's start with the guy on the left, the Manet. Woman's face or man's shirt? Sort of which is your primary focal point? I did say lady's face is always like a good one to try to start with. But dude in all white is quite bright, right? The line of the boat here sort of runs through the middle of her head, which may sort of, I think that kind of secondary puts her to a dude in a bright white outfit who is staring straight at you, and he is not inviting you. He's giving you the stink eye. So you're getting mean mugged by this dude. He is the primary focal point. You might be looking around for what you did wrong on why he's giving you the stink eye. That might be when you look at the lady, secondary focal point. So focal point, dude, giving you the angry face. Secondary focal point, lady. Point of view, you're sort of floating above them slightly. Are you on the dock? Like, are you standing on the dock? It feels removed. It feels theatrical. In that we've slightly been given an ever so little bird's eye view. Like, we're certainly not sitting in the boat with them. We are above them. We might still be waiting on the dock. He is not inviting us to engage. He is asking us to, like, step off. So the guy giving you the stink eye, you're slightly passively removed with that passive POV of a slight bird's eye. Get out of here, don't look at my girl is kind of the vibe that's all over this narrative for your interaction with the painting. You're like, all right, dude, chill. So it feels like it's actively asking you to disengage with this painting, which in itself tells a story, right? All right, so over on the right, focal point, woman's face. The flutter of cloth on the sail sort of just like draws your attention towards the middle, towards her face again, right? So you've got that face, and then you've got the movement that redirects you back to her face. Point of view, you're in the boat, right? You're engaged. You're one of the characters in this. You're intimately engaged. Are you the rower? Are you her date? You've got sort of the same theme and subject, the same focal point, but a very different relationship between these two paintings, because focal point and point of view come together for how you engage in that piece. So this one, with your sort of bird's eye passivating point of view and the mean mug you're getting from the focal point, is sort of disengaging, right? Whereas this piece, you've got this lovely lady staring straight into your eyes. You've got a very active, engaged point of view as a character in the scene. This one's quite intimate, maybe even uncomfortably intimate. Depends on how you feel about the lady. So that's how focal point and point of view work together to help you interpret the scene. All right.